Hi everyone, this is Lisa from Cookery Nation. I just wanted to say, hey, today what we're doing is we are going to be cooking, let me just turn this down here. There we go. There we go. Today we're cooking Asian pork and we are cooking rice and we're doing some veg to go along with it. So, the whole point of this live stream is so that you can see me cook something from start to finish. And there's no cuts, there's no takebacks, there's no fancy editing. It's just how do I get a meal thrown together that is, you know, 3 different components. Some people have a really difficult time figuring out how to get everything together without everything going awry. So today is a really good example of how you can pull 3 different things together using 2 pots, and it's incredibly simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to get started first with our rice. Now remember, rice you can cook way ahead of time. You don't even need to do it while you're doing the Asian pork. You can do it ahead of time and have it in the freezer or in the fridge. It's not a problem. I'm going to show you how I do it all at the same time. So the first thing we're going to do is we've got our rice in here and we're going to give it a rinse. And this gets rid of the starches. And so I like to, like we say on the website, we've got the recipe and instructions on how to make rice. And for me, the ratio is 1:1 because I have a really good tight fitting lid. If I didn't, I would use our towel trick, which is also on the website. Alright, so once you've got a decent amount of starch out of here, we're going to take our sieve and just get rid of this starchy water. Okay, that is a step you don't want to miss because that's what's going to make your rice fluffy. Okay, so we just got this, and I have equal parts, 1 cup of rice to 1 cup of water. That's what works for my stove. And if you watched our other making rice video and read the articles, we talk a lot about figuring out what works for your stove and your pots and what have you. But really, if you've got a really good tight fitting lid, 1:1 is a great ratio. I'm going to put in about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I'm not going to put the lid on yet. I'm going to put it on high and I'm going to watch it. And once it comes to a boil, I put the lid on and put it on its lowest setting. That's it. So I'm going to keep the lid off so I can actually see when it boils. If you don't see when it boils, it'll boil for too long, evaporate too much of your water, and that's not good. Okay, so I can see that. It's right there. And while that's going on, I have got most of my mise en place ready for the Asian pork. So what I'm going to do is going to finish off my mise en place while that water's coming up to boil. I'm gonna let you have a look here at my mise en place. I'm going to turn the camera around. Pardon me. So I've got my soy sauce, my oyster sauce, my Chinese 5-spice, my sesame oil, my garlic, and here's garlic and for the veg. Okay, I'm going to be doing the ginger and finishing off the mushrooms, and I need to finish cutting up the veg. So, a couple of things. I'm gonna turn you around so that you can see what I'm doing here. Now, I'm hoping Friday that I may actually have a 2-camera setup, which would be awesome. So bear with me. I'm not a tech guru. I am a home cook. So as we get things sorted as far as technology goes, I'll let you know. There's a reason I have this here. Don't worry, I'm not doing my hair. Okay, so this is our knob of ginger that we're going to have for the Asian pork. And all you do is you take off the skin. Now this was a frozen piece of ginger that I just cut off a piece, and then it's so easy to cut through. You can even use a spoon. But I'm just going to do it this way. Don't need a fancy cooking hack for that. And then, of course, you put your trash into your trash bucket that I have over here. Okay. This is where I put all my scraps. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my claw method and slice this ginger like that. And then I'm going to kind of just do like some matchsticks. And when ginger's been frozen, it's really a lot easier to cut. It doesn't get all stringy on you. So we're just going to keep chopping it until it gets tiny enough that we can do the rocking motion. Okay, so now we can do this. And you notice I have a tea towel underneath my little cutting board here, and then that way it doesn't slip on me. Now, what's my rice doing? Almost boiling. Look at that already. It's almost boiling. Okay. Make sure you keep your hands clear and just keep dragging it. There we go. Oh, rice has got about 12, I'd have to say 12 seconds left. Maybe. Yeah, it's really important you catch it right when it starts to boil. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, the lid goes on. Heat goes down to low, and timer gets set for 15 minutes. Okay. So, do I have another dish for my ginger? Yes, I do. Some people skip the mise en place stage because they're worried about getting too many dishes going on. But I'm telling you, once you get it sorted, it makes the entire process go much, much quicker. Okay, so now I'm going to just finish off doing up my veg. We're just going to do some nice red peppers in big chunks. Because what we're going to do is we're going to saute them at the last minute. Now, although we're making Asian pork, we're not going to be using a wok. We're just using a regular fry pan. And that's one of the beauties of this recipe, is you don't have to have a wok, see? Okay, so these are nicely cut up. There we go. Now, something I wanted to show you, that's where this guy comes in, is I actually did see this on YouTube, and it's a kitchen hack that is for people who are really nervous using a sharp knife to cut onions and whatnot, or they have really shaky hands or something. This is an awesome trick. Now, it has to be a steel pick, and it's just a hair pick. That's all it is. And you clean it off, and you only use this in the kitchen, right? So, let's show what I'm going to do with this for my onion. So, I'm going to take this end off, I'm going to take this end off, and I'm going to cut it like this, okay? Take this skin off. John, behave. There we go. Trash bowl. Okay. And take this skin off. And I might use all this onion, I might not. However, I've noticed that when I do it this way too, it goes so much faster that you barely cry. So this goes down like this. See? Okay. You take your knife and you go through, depending on how big you want your dice, you just go through either each one of the picks, oops, or every other pick. And you notice your hands are not anywhere near. Okay, so then you turn it this way because you want to have your dice, okay? And you cut it until you get to the pick, and then you stop. And And I want a decent dice, like a fairly small dice for my Asian pork. Okay? So now we cut down here. Now, look at, you've got a perfectly lovely fine dice. And it works like a charm. Now, I think actually this is going to be all the onion I need, so I'm going to put this guy away for later. And I'm going to put this onion aside in my mise en place. And I'm going to show you the same trick you can do for these little tiny wobbly mushrooms that I'm using. These are not very big mushrooms, and I want to have them kind of smallish, okay? I don't want big chunks of mushrooms. So, what I'm going to do is I'll take my handy guy here, like this. You don't need a fancy machine. Do it this way and do it that way, and then take it off. So what you end up with is these lovely uniform pieces, and in any that aren't, you just break it up. Right? So I end up, before you know it, with an entire bowl of really nice sized mushrooms. The other thing you can do with this is if you have a cucumber and you want to have perfectly even pieces, you just stick it down the lengthwise of the cucumber and go through and make it as wide as you want the slices. Works with tomatoes too if you use a serrated knife. Alright? Handy, handy, handy tool, especially if you've got shaky hands or you're nervous around the knives. Works like a charm. So, I believe we have everything here aside from our pork, and that is in the fridge. Our rice is doing its thing, so we're going to get on to cooking the Asian pork now. Just that quick, okay? So now I'm going to get the camera up here. Like I say, hopefully our technology will get better. Hopefully. And I need my stool because I am vertically challenged. And we'll get you turned around. There we go. There we go. That's gonna work just fine. Tickety boo. Okay, so this is our Asian pork pan. This is our rice pan. That's on nice low. And we're gonna get going with this Asian pork now. Alright, so we're gonna put a little swirl of oil in the pan and put it up to medium heat. As that's warming up, I'm just gonna get these knives out of the way so they're not cluttering up the counter, and get them washed up. Okay, that's that. And the cutting board, done. Good, good, good. Okay, so our pan is heating up, and the first thing we're going to want to do is have our onions. And then it will be our mushrooms. So we have those at the ready. And our rice still has 7.5 minutes to go, and then it's going to need to rest for 10. And it's all going to come together so quickly. So we got to wait for this to heat up because it needs to be at a fairly decent sizzle. We want to soften up our onions and then do our mushrooms. Okay, and we're going to do a relatively plain rice, so we're going to do the salt and butter and a little bit of basil, because there's going to be an awful lot of flavor going on in the pork. I'm going to grab the pork. And you can do this recipe, you don't have to use ground pork, you can use ground chicken or ground turkey. You can do half and half ground beef. You could even do ground beef, it doesn't matter. You can do any ground meat you'd like. And there's not a lot of fat in this either. Okay, so this is ramping up quite nicely. Once the oil has a bit of a glisten to it, then you'll know that it's hot. Because you don't want the onions or the mushrooms just kind of sitting in the oil. That's not good. You want them to sizzle. I'll move this handle out of the way. Okay, so it looks like our oil is glistening a little bit. We'll just do a little test onion. Oh, yeah, sizzling. Okay, so we'll get these guys in here. There we go. And put the dish in the sink. We're just going to let this sit for a minute, because once you put something in the pan, it loses heat. It cools down the pan. So we're just going to let it come back up to heat a little bit. And it's sizzling, sizzling. And you can already smell the onions. And you see how nicely that little hair whisk or hair pick diced up everything? Everything's pretty much even. And we didn't have to worry about our onion rocking, and we didn't have to worry about even doing the claw. It's fantastic. But you have to make sure that you don't use a plastic one. It has to be metal, and it has to be fairly decently strong. My husband picked that up for me. I think he just got it at the Walmart. And you can order ready, like cooking specific tools like that, but then you're paying a whole lot more money for them, that's for sure, for doing the same thing. Okay, make sure they're spread out and adjust your heat. If it's not sizzling enough, then bring the heat up a little bit. If it feels like it's getting a little bit too hot, just bring the heat down a little bit. And then every once in a while, just give it a quick stir and then spread it back out, because you don't want them all clumped up. And we do not want them to get overly browned. We just want them to become soft. There we go. And this will feed 3 or 4 people. It feeds 3 adults for sure. If you're on your own, you can make this entire recipe and easily have 3 full dinners that you can just pack away, and then you can freeze it, take it out of the freezer, reheat it, and it's good to go. Good to go. It is a perfect freezer meal. If you wanted to do, double or triple the batch for the Asian pork alone, and then just separate it out, and then all you have to do come dinner time is make the rice, you can do that too. And when I buy my pork, I usually buy it in a big humongous flat of pork, and then I separate it out into 1 pound lots, ready to go. This is my 1 pound of ground pork already measured out. So when it comes time for dinner, I know that I'm going to want one of those is going to make one of these recipes. Okay, so we can see that our onions are getting really close to starting to brown. So what we're going to do is we're going to now throw in our mushrooms. And this is about 8 of those tiny little mushrooms. So it would be maybe 4 big mushrooms, larger mushrooms. And these are going to sweat down. And you want it to sizzle, but if it's sizzling too much, again, regulate your heat. Just bring it down a little bit. Now it's getting a little bit too much, so I want to bring it down a little bit so that it can just start to steam out the moisture out of those mushrooms. And our rice has a grand total of 1 minute left, and then it'll be resting for 10 minutes. And these you want to stir it around a little bit more than you did with the mushrooms, because remember we've got those mushrooms in there, or with the onions in there, and we don't want them to get overly brown, so they need to kind of be moving around a little bit. Now you notice we have not salted anything yet, and that's because we're using soy sauce, and it's low sodium soy sauce, but it still has quite a bit of sodium. Okay, so you notice that even though I turned my heat down, it's starting to sizzle a lot. So we're going to bring the heat down even more. I'm only at 2 on the dial. Now I'm also using a cast iron pan, which heats up really, really well. So it depends on your pan. But just listen to your food, and you'll notice, oh, there's our timer for the rice. So we're going to take this and move it over off the heat, turn off the heat, and we're not even going to touch it. It's just going to sit there and rest for 10 minutes. I'm going to put a 10-minute timer on, and the reality is you don't even need to. Even if it took us 15 minutes to do the rest of this pork, that can just sit there. It can sit there for 20 minutes. It doesn't really matter. Nothing's going to happen to it. That's the beauty of doing the rice that way. It's done. It's just done. So the only thing that has to happen is it needs a minimum of 10 minutes to rest. And that way it does the rest of the absorbing of the liquid in the pan. If you wanted to change it up, you could easily have used chicken stock or veggie stock, added some garlic, some sliced ginger. You could do all kinds of things, but because this is so flavorful, I leave the rice plain. Put our mushroom dish in the sink. And you can see how much this mushrooms have shrunk. They've shrunk down a whole lot. Now I'm not going to cook the mushrooms all the way through because I'm going to throw in the pork now. I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to let the pan come up to heat a little bit more again because I want the pork to sizzle when it goes in. Okay. So we've got our pork. The pan's nice and hot. We're just going to throw this in. Okay, we're going to let the pot come back up to temperature while we go and wash our hands really, really well. Okay, so the pork has cooled down the pan quite a bit, so it's nicely coming up to temperature. It's at about a 4. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just start breaking it up. I'm just going to leave these mushrooms over here. And when you break it up, you have to let the pan come back to a sizzle. Always have the pan sizzling. Now you don't want it to be going crazy, but you need it sizzling. Otherwise you're just going to steam the meat. And you can hear how the pan is cooling down. So we'll turn that up a little bit. And once you're hearing it sizzle, you can give it a, let's see how it's doing underneath. If you're dealing with cast iron, sometimes it's a good idea to have your glove handy, because what happens is the heat transfers into the handle of the pan and get quite hot. And you notice I didn't have to add any more fat to the pan because, of course, ground pork has fat in it. It's not a lot, but it's just enough. Okay, so it's not sizzling too badly right now, so we want to get it a little bit hotter. And the rice is still, it's got about 6 minutes. Rice is going to be done way sooner than we're going to be done this, but it's going to come out fairly close. So, I mean, don't be intimidated by making rice with a meal. It's one of the easiest things you can make. Once you get the technique down pat, as far as, you know, what's your proper ratio and things like this, you have to experiment with it to get it just right. And then once you figured it all out, then you don't change a thing. You use the same pot, same lid, same element, same everything, and then it will come out perfectly every time. I avoided making rice for years unless I had a rice cooker, and I just couldn't figure it out. I just didn't know why, but it just wasn't working. So until I actually figured it out, I didn't make a lot of rice. Now I make loads of rice, brown rice, all manner of things. And the only thing that changes is with brown rice, it takes a little bit longer. Well, it takes 25-30 minutes to cook, and then 10 minutes to rest, of course. Okay, so let's get this up to a sizzle. Come on. There we go. And let it do its thing, come up to a sizzle. And just keep regulating the heat. There we go. Now I don't like, sometimes I'll put my garlic in right after, garlic and ginger right after the mushrooms, and sometimes I don't, but it just depends on how strong you want your garlic, because the more you cook your garlic and your ginger, the softer the flavor is. So if you want it softer, definitely, I think in the recipe, I believe I put it in right after the mushrooms. And today, what the heck, I'm going to put it after the pork. Now because most of the pork is almost all the way cooked through, I'm going to mix in the mushrooms and the onions. Get it all mixed through. And break up all that pork. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is get that heat back up and push over a little bit of this pork, because now we're going to give the ginger and the garlic a go here. So I got like 3 cloves of garlic and about an inch knob of ginger. Put that in there. Put that in there. Throw these in the sink. There we go. And this is just going to cook for about a minute, because you don't want raw ginger and raw garlic. It needs to be cooked. I'm just going to take some of the liquid down the side of the pan. There we go. Well, I can smell the ginger and I can smell the garlic. It smells awesome. It's going to be a nice, yummy supper. You just need to get that raw flavor out of the ginger and the garlic. So, and it only takes a minute or two. And then what you're going to do is you're going to mix it all together. There we go. Get it all mixed together. Hopefully the steam's not wrecking the camera. Oh yeah, smells amazing. Okay, so we've got that. We'll turn the heat down to medium. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start adding our spices and fixins. Now this is the Chinese 5-spice. It's fantastic. I'm going to get that mixed in. And this is where you go, oh my goodness! Definitely so much flavor with the anise and the cinnamon, the nutmeg. It is fantastic. I used to be frightened of Chinese 5-spice, don't know why, not anymore. Now I do all of these parts one at a time just so that I can make sure everything is coated. Oh, and there's our rice. We'll just turn off the timer, and I'm just going to leave the rice. I'm not going to bother with it. It's fine doing what it's doing. And then we've got all that mixed in. Now we're going to do the sesame oil. And it doesn't really matter what order you do it in. I just like to do it one at a time. There we go. Oh, the sesame is awesome. And then the oyster sauce. Throw these in the sink. And you can, this is gluten-free oyster sauce, because of course I have celiac, but you just use regular oyster sauce. And again, I'm not adding salt because all these things have enough salt. I don't add salt to my Chinese 5-spice. If you buy it at the store, it may have added salt. But like I say, between the oyster sauce and the soy sauce, even low sodium, it has more than enough salt in it. And then if by chance you need more salt, you just add it at the table. And then the soy sauce. And this is where the color is coming in nicely. And you notice I'm not using a wok, just a fry pan. You just have to have nice high heat. Regulate your heat. Okay. So there's that. Now, what I am going to do, the pork is done. It's done. Okay? So I'm going to actually put this into a dish because I'm going to use the same pan for the veg. So this can just come right out and be put into this pan. And I don't need to clean the pan or anything. I'm just going to put it back on the heat. And because I took most of the oil out, I'm just going to add just a little bit. And this is where the veg comes in. It won't take long for this pan to heat up. And then we dump our peppers in there. The sink. Let that come back up to heat. Get a nice sizzle. So our rice is done. Our rice is done. Our pork is done. And I still like to have a bit of a crunch to my peppers, so I'm not going to wilt them down a whole heck of a lot. Probably 3 minutes worth of cooking is really all it's going to take. And it's taking some of the flavors from the pan. I'm just going to use the same wooden utensil I did for the other. And in between stirring, you let it sit for a minute, as long as it's not too hot. It's getting a little bit loud right now, so we're going to turn it down to about a 5 or a 6. And put our dishes away. Give it a shake, but you want a decently high heat at the bottom of these peppers, and it'll force some of the moisture out without making it go mushy. You don't want mushy peppers. And then give it a stir. And you can really smell the peppers. Fantastic. Turn the heat down a little bit more. And again, it depends on your pan. My pan holds the heat really, really well. So I tend to end up turning it down loads. The only thing I'm going to add to these peppers might be a little bit of basil. I am a huge, huge fan of basil. Where are we here? Oh, wait. Out of basil. Hang on. There it is. Okay. A little bit of basil on there. We got a little bit of color. Now we're going to throw on that other garlic. So that can cook. Big fan of garlic. If you don't have fresh garlic, just give it a sprinkle of dried. But remember, you don't need as much dried as you do fresh. Sometimes people think there's so much garlic going in there, but fresh is never as strong as dried. You'd need 3 times more fresh garlic than dried. Okay, so we can see we're softening up, but we're not mushy. All right. So now what we're going to do We're going to turn this heat off. We're going to take this off of the heat. And you can either plate this up in 3 different plates, one for the rice, one for the veg, one for the pork. Or the way I like to do it is I get one big platter, and I will lay the rice on the bottom, then do a layer of pork, and then do the veg on top. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this aside, and we're going to deal with the rice. So let's have a look at our rice. Okay, I'm going to, again, why waste a utensil? Look at, it's just breaking up beautifully. It's absolutely perfect. Now, hopefully you can see that. There we go. So what I like to do with my rice, oh, see, just perfect. Didn't stick on the bottom, not even at all. Everything is cooked just right, exactly the way I wanted it to. And then what I do is I like to use butter. I just use a little bit of butter, nothing crazy, just to give it a little bit of richness. There we are. And then I stir this around. Now the rice, I will add some salt. There we go. There we are. And just to be a little bit different, because I can, I'm going to add a little bit of oregano to this. There we go. There. Just to have a little bit of added flavor. And you don't need much, again, especially if you're using dried. Now my element comes down in heat quite quickly, so, and this is actually an oven-proof dish, so I don't have a problem putting it on this element. Okay, so there we go. There's the rice, and the pot goes into the sink. There we go. And then I can take my glove off now. And then comes the pork. And again, if you're going to make this up so that you can have ready-made freezer meals, then you would just pack it up individually. Let it cool a bit, pack it up individually, and then you're all set. I'll throw that in the sink. And then comes these amazing red peppers. There we go. There we go. And then, for good measure, let's put that in the sink. We're just going to add a little bit of sesame seeds. And you can roast these if you like, but I don't. It's not that I don't like it, I just don't do that. And then, guess what? Dinner's ready. Just like that. Now, let's bring you down from here. And there we go. We're back. All right. There we go. Like I say, hopefully I'll get the technology. I'll get a new setup for Friday, hopefully, for a recipe demo. Okay, so that's all there is to it. It's all done. Just that quick. How awesome is that? And it looks beautiful. It tastes amazing. And like I said, it's so easy. You can make the rice ahead of time. You can make the pork ahead of time. All of that. And or even if you don't, look at how quickly it comes together. All right? And that's just a matter of have your mise en place. It makes the world of difference. Because if I had to sit there and chop anything while things were cooking, first of all, you get very easily distracted. You don't know what you've used and what you haven't used. You don't know if you're missing anything. I would much rather have everything set up and go, oh my goodness, this is what I'm missing. Go and find it or decide on something else or what have you. Always have your mise en place. Once everything gets going, the cooking part is really, really quick. Now, the Asian pork is on the website. I'll put a link to it. We also have another video on how to do rice specifically, and a recipe on how to do plain rice, just plain rice. The roasted or the peppers are not on the website, but you saw exactly how I did it. I'll do up a recipe at some point and put it up there. But that is an entire meal. Done. Just like that. And even with all my yakking, it is only 35 minutes, 47 minutes. Okay. But that's with all my yakking. Okay? So ideally it would take about 20 minutes. 25 minutes. 25 minutes. Because as long as it takes to do the rice, you can be doing the pork. Right? So max out at 30 minutes and supper's on the table. Just like that. Okay guys, this is our Wednesday full meal deal live stream. Every Wednesday we're going to do a meal from start to finish. No cuts, no rehearsals, no editing, just that. On Fridays we will do a recipe demo, which is a more detailed look at a specific recipe with all the measurements and whatnot. And then Monday is when we come back and do a morning coffee and discuss the newest weekly challenge on the website. So check that out. If you have any comments or feedback to give on the video or any questions, just let us know. Come to the website or leave comments or questions below. Subscribe so you'll know when we're coming up next. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you try it. Let us know if you do. Come by and visit us at cookerynation.com, and we will see you on Friday. Bye-bye for now.